Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to do a quick 5-minute video on pipelines because it's an area that's come up on the election campaign. I'll go through three or four key areas right now. Let me talk about Mulcair, Thomas Mulcair, because he's the biggest threat to the democracy of this country because of his lack of coherency and just the lack of any vision to drive an economy forward. He's too busy pandering for left, right, or whatever type of votes. He is not realistically with a plan that's coherent, that will make sense in terms of growth. He also is anti-pipelines. He's made it quite clear. He's got leaders like Linda McQuaid out there who basically have said the bulk of the oil should stay in the ground. We shouldn't promote it. You can go out and look at the Twitter accounts of a lot of the NDP, and you can also look at they support Agenda 21, which is a pro-green agenda by the UN. So let's really stop there for a second here. We have an economy in Canada that at best is growing at 2%. We have to look at all aspects of that economy. Oil's part of it, and also both internal consumption, which is our domestic market, as well as externally in terms of prepping for what we're going to move forward with an economy. You have to have the right vision to look at all parts of the platform. Pipelines is one part of it because it also supports secondary industries. You take a province like Ontario. Ontario gains significant amount of business from it. We have a lot of piping companies here that make the pipes that go to build the pipelines that the oil is transferred through. We have the gas fitters here that basically put the pipelines together. So in essence, the pipelines are very critical, but we're at a critical phase in Alberta's history right now that we do not have the capacity anymore to move any more oil. We need new pipelines to move that oil. That oil has to go somewhere. So if we cannot move it by pipelines, guess what happens to it? It moves by rail. It's rail that's more dangerous because the rail system was never designed to move that volume of oil. So where does Thomas Mulcair stand on oil moving by rail? He's never said anything the last few weeks or this whole campaign because he's deflected it, because he's too busy pandering for a vote here, a vote here. So realistically, he hasn't come up with a coherent strategy. So how does he say that his plan is palatable? It's not palatable. It's narrow focus. It lacks the vision and the optics other than to basically drive his point home that he's Agenda 21. The second point here that I want to talk about is the First Nations come into play here. But there's a lot of cases is the First Nations have signed deals out in BC to move that oil through areas like Nathan Cullen's territory. And who's Nathan Cullen? Well, he's the finance critic for the NDP party who also is anti-pipeline. Now let's stop there for a second here. That gives you the NDP perspective. Let's talk about the Liberal perspective and what drives Justin Trudeau. Well, the key member of that campaign team is a guy named Gerald Butts. Gerald Butts basically did the FIT Act in Ontario. How much success have we had with that? It's been horrible. Let's also look at Gerald Butts' statements, and you can go out and Google this on YouTube. Gerald Butts was quoted in an interview. He was against Gateway pipeline. Okay? Why? Because it's going through Canadian territory. It's going through voting blocks for Justin Trudeau. He supports Keystone, which is funny because Keystone is moving Alberta oil down to the refineries in the Houston area or Oklahoma. So let's stop there for a second here. So he's okay if we move the oil down south, but he's not okay if we move it across Canada. It's not being a hypocrite. The second point is Keystone will never be built as long as Obama is president. He's made it clear on his second mandate as president that he's against it. He's come up with different options to defeat it, like the land claim in Nebraska, and he's using the power of some of the Congress to allow him to be able to not have to worry about a veto. Because the way it works in the States is a U.S. president can veto a lot of the legislation there, and that's what he's done with Gateway. However, Congress can overstep that veto if they have enough votes in Congress. Well, the problem in Congress, which is controlled by the Republicans, is they don't have enough of that vote of the 2/3 of Congress to push it through. Why? Because there's some soft Republican vote that supports that green interest that's backing their campaign. So when you look at pipeline, it's very political in terms of both the U.S. statements Mulcair's statement along with Justin Trudeau and how they align. The next big point here is let's talk the East-West Pipeline. The East-West Pipeline would have contribute about $12 billion to the GDP. What is Mulcair claiming at? We need money in our GDP. We need that money to provide taxation dollars to support his new healthcare spending initiatives. Well, where's he going to get that? Well, he's promoted it. He's not for it. Why? Because his Quebec voters in the southern townships are against building a new pipeline there because they're scared of what happened in Lake Makitik and all that. They're worried about it, right? Which is valid, right? However, don't hide behind that, Mulcair. Come clean with where you stand on the pipelines, because in essence, you keep talking about trade surpluses and trade balance of payments imbalances that basically are driving things you call Harper out at. And yet if Harper is going on a pro-agenda to move some more exports out, including oil to Asia and Europe, you stop him. So really, where does Mulcair stand on exports to reduce that deficit, to bring more foreign direct investment in, to get us more control over our deficits around the trade and around the balance payment? He doesn't stand anywhere because he's not clear with his policies.